Dr. Amanda Reynolds knew she shouldn't be poking around the alien delegation's private quarters, but the sound coming from their beverage synthesizer was driving her crazy. It wasn't just the high-pitched whine that bothered her. It was the distinctive resonance pattern that screamed misaligned power coupling to her trained ear. "Just 5 minutes," she muttered, pulling a multi-tool from her formal uniform pocket. The gleaming corridor of the Galactic Council's Earth Embassy was deserted. Everyone else was attending the grand ceremony marking humanity's admission to the interstellar community. She should have been there too, but some mechanical problems just begged to be fixed. The synthesizer's access panel slid open with a soft hiss. Amanda whistled low. The alien technology was beautiful, all crystalline matrices and quantum lock circuits. But there, right where she expected, was a power coupling vibrating ever so slightly out of sync with its housing. "Engineering is engineering, no matter where you're from," she said, reaching for the coupling. Her fingers had barely brushed the component when a sharp voice cut through the air. "Step away from the equipment, human." Amanda turned to find herself face to face with Chief Engineer Zexkar of the Centaurian delegation. The tall, crystalline being's surface facets flashed warning patterns of deep red and orange. "I apologize for the intrusion," Amanda said, straightening up. "But your synthesizer's power coupling is misaligned. The resonance could damage other components if left unchecked." "Impossible." Zexkar's translator rendered their response in clipped tones. "Our technology is precision engineered to quantum-level tolerances. Your primitive human senses must be mistaken." Amanda bit back a sharp retort. Instead, she pulled out her handheld diagnostic tool. Human-made, clunky, and reliable. "See for yourself. The coupling's vibrating at 12.47 microhertz off baseline." The Centaurians' color patterns shifted to a skeptical blue-green as they examined the readout. "This cannot be correct. Our systems are perfect." "Nothing's perfect," Amanda replied, unable to keep a hint of amusement from her voice. "But sometimes imperfection is what makes things work better. Watch." Before Zexkar could protest, she made a minute adjustment to the coupling. The whine that had been bothering her ceased immediately. The synthesizer's power readings, displayed on her diagnostic tool, showed a 15% improvement in efficiency. The Centaurian's surface blazed with patterns Amanda had never seen before. "How this defies our engineering principles. The coupling is now deliberately misaligned." "But it works better," Amanda pointed out. "Sometimes you need a little controlled chaos, though." She was interrupted by a sudden commotion in the corridor. 3 more Centaurians burst in, their crystalline forms pulsing with urgent patterns. "Chief Engineer, the drive core. Something's wrong." Amanda followed as they rushed to a nearby monitoring station. The display showed a massive Centaurian vessel in orbit, its warp field fluctuating dangerously. The patterns were familiar. She'd seen something similar during humanity's early warp experiments. "Your field harmonics are fighting each other," she said, studying the readings. "Like they're too perfectly aligned and creating a feedback loop." "Impossible," Zexkar insisted, but their color patterns showed fear. "Our designs are flawless." "Maybe that's the problem," Amanda muttered. She pointed to a section of the display. "Look, if you introduced some controlled asymmetry into the field, like what we did with the synthesizer." The Centaurian's patterns cycled through various shades of shock and disbelief as she explained her theory. It went against everything they knew about engineering. But as the ship's warp field continued to destabilize, they ran out of options. "Do it," Zexkar finally ordered. Amanda's fingers flew over the controls, deliberately introducing carefully calculated imperfections into the warp field matrix. The readings stabilized almost immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. "How did you know?" Zexkar asked finally. Amanda shrugged. "Sometimes the best solutions aren't the prettiest ones. Humans learned it the hard way. Every breakthrough we've had came from being willing to get our hands dirty and break the rules a little." She looked up at the display, where the Centaurian ship's warp field now pulsed with stable, if slightly asymmetric, patterns. "I have a feeling this isn't an isolated incident, is it?" The Centaurian's response was interrupted by urgent messages flooding the communication channels. Similar drive failures were being reported across the sector. As Amanda read the reports, a chill ran down her spine. Humanity's primitive approach to warp technology might be the galaxy's only hope. The Galactic Council's engineering chamber buzzed with agitation as Dr. Amanda Reynolds walked to the center platform. Hundreds of alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their various appendages and sensory organs focused intently on the human engineer who dared to challenge their fundamental understanding of warp technology. "Distinguished members of the council," Amanda began, her voice steady despite the pressure. "I'm about to show you something that violates every principle in your engineering manuals, and it's going to work better than anything you've ever seen." She gestured to the holographic display behind her, where a standard alien warp drive schematic rotated slowly. Its crystalline matrices and quantum fields were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, and therein lay the problem. "Your drives are failing because they're too perfect," she continued, ignoring the ripple of dismissive sounds from the audience. "You're trying to impose absolute order on spacetime, and spacetime is fighting back." A Medusan engineer rose from their hovering platform. "Dr. Reynolds, with all due respect, your species achieved warp travel barely a decade ago. We have been perfecting these designs for millennia." "Exactly my point," Amanda replied, inputting commands into the holographic controls. "Watch what happens when I introduce a deliberate flaw into the field geometry." The perfect symmetry of the drive schematic distorted slightly as she adjusted the parameters. Gasps of horror echoed through the chamber as the beautiful crystalline patterns warped into something that looked almost organic. "This is sacrilege," shouted a Rigelian representative. "You're destroying thousands of years of progress." Amanda smiled. "Am I? Kroll, would you mind helping me demonstrate?" A tall, serpentine Zentarian slithered forward from the shadows. Kroll, the youngest member of the Zentarian Science Academy, had been watching Amanda's work with growing fascination over the past week. "Activating test sequence," Kroll announced, their scales shifting color with excitement. The holographic drive spun faster, its energy readings climbing. Where a standard drive would have started showing signs of instability at this power level, Amanda's modified version hummed along smoothly. The asymmetric field actually grew stronger as it absorbed and adapted to spatial distortions. "Impossible," whispered the Medusan engineer. "That's what they said about the first airplane," Amanda replied. "Look, I used to work as a NASCAR engineer before I got into quantum physics. Know what I learned? The fastest cars aren't the most perfectly balanced ones. They're the ones that can adapt to the track, that work with the chaos instead of fighting it." She pulled up another display, this one showing her original sketches. "These modifications are based on old Earth muscle car designs. We used to call it sweet spot tuning. Finding that perfect imperfection that makes everything sing." Kroll's scales rippled with patterns of agreement. "The data is undeniable. Dr. Reynolds' design shows a 40% improvement in field stability across all test metrics." The chamber erupted in argument. Amid the chaos, Amanda noticed several younger alien engineers studying her designs with intense interest. They saw what their elders couldn't or wouldn't. "This is more than just a technical issue," she pressed on. "It's about how we approach problems. Humans didn't achieve warp travel by following textbooks. We did it by trying crazy ideas, by being willing to fail spectacularly until we found what worked." A senior council member floated forward. "Dr. Reynolds, your theories are interesting but dangerous. They challenge the very foundation of our understanding." "Good," Amanda replied firmly, "because your foundation is cracking. Ships are failing across the galaxy because we're trying to force the universe to follow our rules instead of working with its natural chaos." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and sensory organs of each delegate. "We can keep chasing perfection until our ships tear themselves apart, Or we can try something new. Something that might look messy and frightening at first, but could save countless lives." The silence that followed was broken by Kroll's translator. "I volunteer to assist Dr. Reynolds in further testing. My laboratory is at her disposal." "This is highly irregular," the council member protested. "So was breaking the sound barrier," Amanda said with a grin. "Sometimes irregular is exactly what we need." "We're about to get caught," Kroll whispered, their scales shifting to anxious patterns of deep purple. The Zentarian's long, serpentine form was coiled tightly around a crystalline data terminal in their private laboratory. "Only if we stop to think about it," Amanda replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. She'd spent 3 days learning to read Zentarian script, and now the alien characters were starting to make a terrible kind of sense. Besides, we're already in trouble. Might as well make it worth it. The classified drive schematics floated before them. Thousands of years of alien engineering laid bare in streams of quantum-encrypted data, each design built upon the last, a perfect technological evolution spanning millennia. Too perfect. "There," Amanda muttered, highlighting a section of code. "Look at this base configuration. It shows up in every single design, even across different species." Kroll's sensory frills extended in surprise. "That's the founding theorem of spatial manipulation. It's the cornerstone of all warp technology." "It's wrong." Amanda's voice was flat. "Or not wrong exactly, but incomplete. It's like someone found a solution that worked and everyone just stopped looking for alternatives." The laboratory door chimed. They both froze. "Security scan in progress," announced an automated voice. Amanda quickly saved the data to her modified quantum drive. Another piece of human technology that horrified alien engineers with its deliberate imperfections. "Kroll, if they catch us." "I knew the risks," the Zentarian interrupted. "My people have lost 3 colony ships in the past month alone. We need answers more than we need rules." The security scan completed with a soft tone. They'd managed to mask their activities for now. Amanda pulled up a new holographic model. "Look at how everyone's building on this same foundation. It's like, imagine if humans had discovered wheels, but only ever made them perfectly round." "Wheels should be round," Kroll pointed out, confused. "Not always. Monster truck tires are deliberately imbalanced for better grip. Tank treads are wheels that aren't even round at all. Sometimes you need to break the obvious rules to solve a problem." She manipulated the display, highlighting patterns across different drive designs. Every advanced species in the galaxy is copying each other's homework, and no one's checking if the first kid got the answer right. Kroll's scales rippled with dawning comprehension. The founding theorem assumes space-time wants to behave in predictable patterns. But it doesn't. Amanda finished. Space-time is messy. It's chaotic. The laboratory door exploded inward. Council security forces poured in, their crystalline armor glowing with containment fields. Leading them was the senior administrator himself, his multifaceted form pulsing with patterns of rage. "Dr. Amanda Reynolds," his translator boomed. "You are charged with unauthorized access to classified technology and corruption of a council scientist. Your species' provisional membership is hereby suspended pending review." Amanda straightened up, still holding her quantum drive. "You might want to reconsider that," she said calmly, "because we just figured out why your ships are failing, and you're not going to like the answer." "Your primitive understanding," the administrator began. "Our primitive understanding is exactly what you need." Amanda's voice rang through the laboratory. "Your perfect math is killing people. Sometimes you need to get your hands dirty. Sometimes you need to break things to understand how they really work." She gestured at the holographic display, still showing the cascading pattern of copied designs. 10,000 years of progress, built on a foundation that no one ever questioned. You're so afraid of being wrong that you'd rather fail perfectly than succeed messy. Kroll slithered forward, placing themselves between Amanda and the security forces. "She's right. I've seen her designs work. They violate every principle we hold sacred, but they work better than anything we've built." The administrator's crystalline form vibrated with conflict. "The Council cannot allow. The Council can't allow ships to keep failing," Amanda interrupted. "You can arrest me if you want, but first, let me show you what we found. Let me prove that sometimes the wrong way is the right answer." The laboratory fell silent except for the hum of equipment. The next few moments would determine not just Amanda's fate, but potentially the future of warp travel itself. Finally, the administrator spoke. "You have 1 hour to make your case, human. After that, if you're wrong, you'll wish we had simply arrested you." Amanda grinned. "Trust me, you're going to love how wrong I am." The abandoned lunar junkyard wasn't much to look at, but to Amanda Reynolds, it was perfect. Decades of failed space programs had left a treasure trove of obsolete equipment scattered across the crater floor, illuminated by Earth's blue glow through the dome above. "This is your prestigious laboratory?" Kroll asked, their scales shifting to a skeptical shade of green. The Zentarian carefully navigated around a pile of discarded engine parts. "Better," Amanda replied, pulling a tarp off an old fabrication unit. "This is a garage, and garages are where humans do their best work." The makeshift workshop was coming together nicely. Maria Torres, fresh from the demolition derby circuit, was already elbow-deep in a gutted warp coil, her expertise with high-stress engine systems proving surprisingly relevant. Dr. James Chen, the chaos theory physicist who'd been laughed out of 3 universities, had covered an entire wall with equations that looked more like abstract art than mathematics. "The Council would have given you a proper facility," Kroll noted, watching Maria attach what appeared to be a monster truck suspension system to a quantum field generator. "The Council would have given us oversight, regulations, and limitations," Amanda countered. She gestured to their cobbled-together test apparatus. "Sometimes you need the freedom to try really stupid ideas to find the brilliant ones." The apparatus in question would have given any Council engineer a seizure. They'd stripped down a standard alien warp drive to its basics, then rebuilt it using principles from a dozen different Earth technologies. The quantum field matrix was stabilized by modified hydraulic dampers. The power distribution system borrowed concepts from old muscle car engines. "It's alive," Maria shouted as the drive hummed to life, its field patterns dancing across their sensors in ways that defied conventional physics. Dr. Chen looked up from his equations. "The asymmetric field is actually self-stabilizing. It's like a river finding its own path. We're not forcing space-time to behave. We're letting it show us how it wants to flow." "That's impossible," Kroll said automatically, then caught themselves. But then again, so is everything else about this project. A warning klaxon suddenly blared. The test field was expanding beyond their predictions, sending tools floating off workbenches as local gravity fluctuated. "Power it down," Amanda called, but Maria was already shaking her head. "Controls aren't responding. The field's feeding back on itself." Amanda dove for the manual shutdown, her mind racing. This was exactly the kind of cascade failure that was plaguing ships across the galaxy. But as she watched the field patterns spiral across their displays, something clicked. "Wait," she said, "look at the harmonics. They're not fighting the feedback. They're adapting to it." The field stabilized on its own, settling into a configuration that looked more like a living thing than a machine. The gravity distortions ceased, tools clattering back to the floor in the sudden quiet. "Holy shit," Maria whispered, staring at the readings. "The efficiency rating is off the charts." Dr. Chen was frantically scribbling new equations. "It's beautiful. The field isn't just stable, it's actively compensating for spatial distortions. It's learning." Kroll's scales had shifted to a color Amanda had never seen before. "We need to show this to the Council immediately." "Not yet," Amanda said, studying the drive's pulsing patterns. "They'll want to understand everything before they let us try anything. We need more than theories. We need proof that can't be ignored." She turned to her team, her eyes bright with the kind of crazy inspiration that had defined human engineering since the first caveman attached a rock to a stick. "Maria, how fast can you scale this up to ship size?" The mechanic grinned. "Give me 3 days and enough coffee." "Dr. Chen, can you map out the field dynamics?" He gestured to his wall of equations, already on it. "It's chaos theory in action. Beautiful chaos." Kroll. Amanda turned to her alien friend. "Are you still with us? Because this is definitely going to void some warranties." The Zentarian's scales rippled with determination. "The Council already thinks I'm corrupted by human thinking. Might as well prove them right." Amanda looked at their impossible creation, built from junkyard parts and forbidden ideas. "Then let's give the galaxy something they'll never forget. A warp drive that breaks all the rules by following the only ones that matter." Their makeshift laboratory hummed with energy and possibility, Earth shining overhead like a reminder that sometimes the craziest ideas came from the most unlikely places. The emergency alert cut through the lunar night like a knife, jerking Amanda awake from her brief nap at her workbench. A holographic display above their jury-rigged command center blazed with red warnings. "Talk to me," she called out, already moving toward the main console. Maria Torres looked up from her station, her face grim in the emergency lighting. "It's bad, boss. The Centaurian colony fleet just dropped out of warp with total drive failure. 23 ships, over 50,000 colonists." Dr. Chen's fingers flew across his interface, similar reports coming in from 6 other sectors. "The cascade is spreading faster than predicted." Kroll's scales had turned ash-gray, a sign of deep distress. "The Zentarian High Council just reported 3 of our passenger liners missing in subspace. My family was on one of them." Amanda's throat tightened. This wasn't just about proving a theory anymore. "How long until the Council's emergency response team arrives at the Centaurian fleet?" 4 hours at best," Maria replied. "And their conventional drives are failing too. They're bleeding atmosphere from microfractures in their hull geometry." Amanda looked at their prototype, ugly, asymmetrical, and held together partly by what Maria called good old-fashioned duct tape engineering. They'd been planning another week of testing before any live demonstration. "Power it up," she ordered. The team stared at her. "The containment field isn't properly calibrated," Dr. Chen protested. "We haven't even done a full power test." "Those people don't have time for proper calibration." Amanda cut him off. "Kroll, what's our fastest path to the Centaurian fleet?" The Zentarian's scales shifted to a determined blue. "Through the L4 debris field, but that's suicide with an untested drive." "Perfect." Amanda was already pulling on her flight suit, an ideal test of our adaptive field mechanics. Maria grabbed her arm. "You can't be serious. Even if the drive holds together, the Council will throw you in prison for unauthorized testing. Then they can arrest me after we save those colonists." Amanda's voice softened. "Look, everything we theorized about, working with chaos instead of against it, letting the field adapt naturally. This is the moment to prove it works. Those ships are failing because they're fighting physics instead of flowing with it." Dr. Chen studied his equations one last time. "The math says it's possible. Crazy, but possible." "Story of my life," Amanda grinned. She turned to Kroll. "I know I'm asking a lot, but I'm going with you." The Zentarian interrupted. "My people need to see this with their own eyes." The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Their prototype, dubbed Junkyard Symphony by Maria, was loaded into a small shuttle. The drive's exposed components and asymmetric geometry made it look like something assembled by a mad scientist, which, Amanda reflected, wasn't far from the truth. As they prepared for launch, a priority message flashed across their screens. The Council was ordering all experimental drive testing halted under penalty of permanent exile. "Last chance to back out," Amanda told her team. Maria snorted and missed the greatest mechanical hack in history. "Not a chance. The universe is chaos." Dr. Chen said simply. It's time someone embraced that fact. Kroll's scales rippled with nervous anticipation. The Council will never forgive this breach of protocol. Then let's make sure we give them something worth being angry about. Amanda initiated the launch sequence. Everyone ready to make history. The shuttle's conventional engines fired, lifting them off the lunar surface. Above them, Earth hung like a blue jewel in the black sky, while ahead lay the challenge of the debris field, and beyond it, thousands of lives hanging in the balance. Powering up the symphony, Maria reported. The prototype drive hummed to life, its field patterns already adapting to the shuttle's structure in ways that would have given Council engineers nightmares. Here goes everything, Amanda muttered, and engaged the drive. The universe bent around them, not with the rigid precision of conventional warp fields, but with a fluid grace that felt almost alive. They weren't forcing their way through space-time. They were dancing with it. As the stars blurred around them, Amanda smiled. Sometimes the best solutions came from breaking all the right rules in all the wrong ways. The Junkyard Symphony emerged from warp space like a surfer cresting a wave. Amanda's hands danced across the controls, feeling the rhythm of space-time through the shuttle's unconventional drive systems. Ahead of them, the massive Centaurian colony fleet hung motionless against the star field, their perfect geometric forms now marred by failing containment fields. Status report, Amanda called out, already plotting their approach vector. Drive efficiency at 97%, Maria responded, her voice tinged with pride. The adaptive field harmonics are actually improving with use. It's learning the local spacetime topology. Dr. Chen was buried in his readings. The field patterns, they're incredible. Look at how they're interacting with the natural quantum fluctuations. It's not fighting them, it's using them for additional stability. Kroll's scales shifted to warning colors. Council vessels approaching from Sector 7. They're ordering us to power down immediately. A new voice cut across their comm system. The Centaurian fleet commander. Unknown vessel, our primary containment fields are failing. We have multiple hull breaches and critical systems damage across all ships. Amanda opened a channel. This is Dr. Amanda Reynolds. We're here to help, but you'll need to trust us. What we're about to do will look wrong, but it works. The human renegade. The commander's translator conveyed both skepticism and desperation. Your drive signature is highly irregular. That's kind of our whole point, Amanda replied. She turned to her team. Maria, prep the field synchronization protocols. Dr. Chen, I need real-time harmonic analysis. Kroll, help me explain this to your people. The Zentarian moved to the comm system. Commander, what you're about to witness violates every principle of conventional warp engineering. But as a scientist of the High Council, I stake my reputation on its effectiveness. Amanda guided their shuttle closer to the nearest colony ship. The Junkyard Symphony's asymmetric field patterns rippled visibly against the backdrop of stars, a stark contrast to the rigid geometries of Centaurian technology. Think of it like surfing, Amanda explained as she worked. A surfer doesn't fight the ocean. They read the waves, feel their rhythm, become part of their flow. We're going to teach your ships to surf the quantum foam. What she means, Dr. Chen interjected, is that we'll extend our adaptive field mechanics to your vessels, allowing them to naturally stabilize by working with local spacetime distortions instead of trying to suppress them. The commander's response was cut off by warning klaxons. Hull integrity at 12%. We're losing containment. Now or never, Amanda muttered. Maria, initiate field extension. Kroll, help me moderate the power flow. Dr. Chen, sing out if you see any harmonic disruptions. Their makeshift drive pulsed with energy as they projected its unconventional field patterns toward the failing colony ship. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the rigid lines of the Centaurian vessel's own field began to shift and flow. It's working, Dr. Chen exclaimed. Their field matrix is adapting to the new configuration. Hull stress is decreasing. Maria's fingers flew across her console. Power draw stabilizing. The ship's own systems are starting to mimic our field patterns. Through the viewport, Amanda watched as the colony ship's failing containment field transformed from a rigid crystal structure into something more organic, more alive. The hull breaches began to seal as the new field patterns worked with the natural forces trying to tear the ship apart instead of fighting them. Impossible, the commander whispered over the comm. No, Amanda replied, allowing herself a small smile. Just a different way of thinking. Your ships have been trying to impose order on chaos. We're teaching them to become part of that chaos instead. She turned to Carol, ready to show them the real magic. The Zentarian's scales rippled with excitement. You're not suggesting. Oh yes, I am. Amanda's grin widened. Let's show them how to dance. With practiced precision, she began guiding their shuttle through a series of maneuvers that would have been suicidal with conventional drives. The Junkyard Symphony's field flowed and twisted, adapting to each distortion in spacetime, turning potential disasters into advantages. It was beautiful, dangerous, and exactly what the galaxy needed to see. Proof that sometimes the best solution was to stop fighting the universe's natural chaos and learn to dance with it instead. You want me to do what? The Medusan engineers' tentacles writhed in distress as they stared at the modified work core before them. Amanda Reynolds wiped grease from her hands and smiled patiently. Hit it with the wrench. Right there, on the quantum field generator's housing. The massive retrofit facility, hastily constructed in Earth orbit, buzzed with activity. Dozens of alien ships waited in line for their turn to receive the Reynolds refit, as it was now being called. After the successful rescue of the Centaurian colony fleet, the Council had no choice but to approve the emergency modification program. This is precision equipment, the Medusan protested. We can't just hit it. Actually, we can, and we should, Kroll interjected, their scales shimmering with amusement. The Zentarian had become Amanda's chief instructor in what they called applied human engineering. The asymmetric resonance from the impact helps establish the initial field instability patterns. Maria Torres walked over, carrying her favorite wrench. Think of it as percussion-assisted quantum calibration, she said with a grin. Sometimes you gotta show the machinery who's boss. The Medusan's tentacles twisted into what Amanda had learned was their equivalent of a wince as they finally took the wrench. The clang that followed was tentative but effective. Good, Amanda exclaimed, checking the readings. Now you're getting it. Dr. Chen, how are the field harmonics looking? From his monitoring station, Dr. Chen gave a thumbs up. Beautiful chaos. The random microfractures in the housing are creating exactly the kind of field irregularities we want. At the next station over, a young Rigelian engineer was actually smiling as they deliberately misaligned a power coupling. 2 weeks ago, they would have considered such an act tantamount to sabotage. The hardest part isn't teaching the technical skills, Amanda explained to the Council observer hovering nearby. It's getting them to trust their instincts, to understand that imperfection can be a feature, not a bug. A commotion at the facility's entrance drew their attention. A massive Centaurian transport had arrived, its crystalline surface still bearing scars from its near-catastrophic drive failure. Right on schedule, Kroll noted. Shall we show them the true meaning of human engineering? Amanda gathered her team. The retrofit of a ship this size would normally take weeks using conventional methods. They had developed a rather unconventional solution. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all configurations, she announced to the gathered engineers, today we're going to demonstrate synchronized field manipulation, or as we like to call it, the quantum mosh pit. The next hour was a carefully orchestrated chaos. Multiple teams worked simultaneously, deliberately creating overlapping field distortions that would have given traditional engineers heart attacks. The ship's drive system fought them at first, trying to maintain its rigid perfection. It's like teaching someone to dance who spent their whole life standing perfectly still, Maria observed, as she guided a Centaurian apprentice through the process. You have to help them feel the rhythm. Slowly, the transport's field patterns began to shift, adopting the more organic configuration that characterized the Reynolds design. When the final calibration was complete, the ship's drive signature pulsed with a healthy, almost musical rhythm. "This goes against everything I was taught," the Centaurian chief engineer admitted, their crystalline form flickering with mixed emotions. "But I cannot argue with the results." Amanda watched as her students, alien engineers from a dozen different species, began to show real enthusiasm for the work. They were starting to understand that engineering wasn't just about following rules and achieving perfection. Sometimes it was about finding the sweet spot between order and chaos. "We're creating more than just better drives," she told Carole as they observed a young Medusan confidently explaining percussive maintenance to a skeptical elder. "We're building a new way of thinking." The council is still struggling with that part, Carole noted, their scales shifting thoughtfully. They want to standardize and regulate these modifications. Amanda laughed. "Good luck with that. The whole point is that each ship finds its own unique harmony. You can't mass-produce improvisation." As if to prove her point, a cheer went up from one of the workstations. A Rigelian vessel had just completed its retrofit, its drive signature displaying patterns that nobody had ever seen before. "Now that," Amanda said with satisfaction, "is what progress looks like." The newly christened Galactic Engineering Academy sparkled under Earth's sun, its crystalline architecture now deliberately incorporating subtle asymmetries that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Amanda Reynolds stood at the podium, looking out over an audience that represented every spacefaring species in known space. "When they asked me to give a speech today," she began, "I told them I had a better idea." At her signal, Maria Torres and Carole wheeled something onto the stage, covered by an old tarp. The council members in the front row shifted uncomfortably. They'd learned that human surprises tended to be memorable. "This," Amanda said, pulling off the tarp, "is a 1969 Chevrolet Camaro engine, or what's left of it. We found it in that lunar junkyard where we built our first prototype." Dr. Chen stepped forward with a quantum scanner, projecting a holographic display of the engine's inner workings. "Notice the wear patterns," he pointed out. "The microscopic imperfections that actually improved its performance over time." The alien students leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on the ancient machinery. Amanda smiled. They were starting to understand. "Engineering isn't just about making things perfect," she continued, her hands moving to the engine. "It's about making them sing. Every machine has its own voice, its own rhythm. Our job isn't to silence that voice in pursuit of theoretical perfection. It's to help it find its true sound." She began to disassemble the engine, her movements precise yet intuitive. "Watch closely. See how each part tells a story. These wear marks show where metal learned to dance with metal. These stress patterns reveal how the engine adapted to forces we never planned for." Carole slithered forward, their scales shimmering with educational patterns. "When Dr. Reynolds first showed me this approach, I thought it was madness. Now I understand. Humans didn't just develop new technology. They developed a new way of listening to the universe." A holographic display shifted to show a modern warp drive built with Reynolds pattern technology. The parallels were obvious. The same organic flow of energy, the same embrace of controlled chaos. "Your first assignment as students of this academy," Amanda announced, "won't be to build anything. Instead, you're going to take things apart. Not with scanners or quantum probes, but with your hands. You're going to feel how machines work, understand their quirks, learn their personalities." She held up a wrench. "This is as important as any quantum calculator, maybe more so, because sometimes the most sophisticated sensors in the galaxy can't tell you what you can learn by simply listening to an engine's rhythm." From the audience, a young Medusan raised a tentacle. "But how do we know if we're doing it right?" Amanda grinned. "That's the best part. There is no right. There's only what works, what feels true, What makes your ship dance among the stars instead of just pushing through them? She turned to the council members. I know this isn't what you expected from a galactic engineering academy. You probably wanted standardized procedures, rigid protocols, reproducible results. But that's not how we got here. Maria stepped forward, holding up the modified sensor array that had helped save the Centaurian fleet. Every ship we modify ends up slightly different. Every solution we find opens up new possibilities. That's not a bug in the system. It's the whole point. The universe is chaos pretending to be order, Dr. Chen added. The moment we embraced that truth, everything changed. Amanda looked out at the faces of her future students, some eager, some skeptical, all ready to begin a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about engineering. So let's make some noise, she said, picking up her wrench. Let's break some rules. Let's teach the galaxy how to rock and roll. The sound of the wrench striking the engine block rang through the hall like a bell, a signal that a new era of engineering had truly begun. And somewhere in the audience, a Centaurian crystal being started tapping out a rhythm that sounded surprisingly like a backbeat. The stars themselves seemed to twinkle a little brighter that day, as if they too were ready to dance to this new wild human way of moving through the cosmos.